Good afternoon, everyone, on this March 17th, St. Patty's Day. Here's the latest confirmed update in regards to Nancy Guthrie case. This is real-time information. New images recovered by the FBI are the real breaking news story. The FBI has recovered additional images from motion-activated cameras around Nancy Guthrie's home, backyard, pool, side yard. The problem is none of these images show the actual abduction or clear suspicious activity. Even more concerning, no footage exists from the night she disappeared, which investigators find highly unusual. A quick reminder, if you're looking for real crime insight, not YouTube theories, this channel is different. I'm a retired NYPD Sergeant, and on Police Off the Cuff, we analyze the cases the way cops and prosecutors do, what matters, what doesn't, and what the internet gets wrong. If that's the perspective you want, subscribe now, because this isn't entertainment, it's experience. And we'd also like to remind everyone that the Police Off the Cuff podcast is sponsored by FanDuel on the Believe Network. So, folks, hold on to your hats, hold on to your loved ones, hold on to your thoughts, hold on to your glass of wine, your cup of coffee, hold on to your service dog. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the Off the Cuff zone, the Police Off the Cuff zone.
There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
Joining me today on March 17th, St. Patty's Day, is retired NYPD Sergeant, professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, attorney, and a fine Irishman in his own right, Professor Mike Geary. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, Bill. Good to see you. Thank you for having me on today in this beautiful St. Patrick's Day.
You know, Mike, I've been accused numerous times of being a bad Irishman, that I don't know where my family was from in Ireland, and I don't always celebrate St. Patty's Day. But if you look at my face, you can say, I have the map of Ireland written. I've been told that you have the map of Ireland written all over your face. I said, well, I'm an American. I would always say that. But
good to see
anyway,
you.
I am proud to be Irish. Anyway, Mike, getting to the case at hand today. The big story was, of course, that the FBI has now recovered some pictures from different dates that are not video, but they were able to pull up like stills and thumbnails, if you will. And that could be tremendously helpful. And one of the ways it can actually be tremendously helpful is that people in the area, or even members from the family, can perhaps identify some of these people, because maybe, depending on what dates these pictures came from, maybe some of the people in these pictures had permission and or authority to be in the backyard, to be by the pool, to be on the property of Nancy Guthrie. But guess what? Maybe they didn't. And that's where the rubber hits the road. And I have some questions about that. But before I go to my questions in regards to that, Mike, I'd like to ask you your opinion in regards to this.
You know, those pictures may not be much. They might be just a single still shot. But if they have a timestamp on it, they give you the time, they give you the date, they give the location, maybe front camera, rear camera, side camera, whatever it happens to be. So you could actually place a particular person in a particular spot at a particular time on a particular date. And if you have a number of those that are seen before the date that Nancy disappeared, you can then say, this happened 2 weeks earlier, 3 weeks earlier, 3 days earlier, whatever those dates are and times are. That shows that this was all intentional. This was well planned, well thought out. And then you get an idea of who this person is, especially if you see the same sort of image on two different cameras on two different dates. That gives you a better idea of who this person is. So I think it's small, it's circumstantial, but it's excellent. But what you need is someone to say, I recognize that person, because maybe in an earlier picture, not on the day that she went missing, but on an earlier picture, that person may not have been careful about their identity or what was in their background, maybe a car or something like that. But this could be has the potential for being tremendously helpful to the FBI.
As you see this thumbnail on the screen, no video, hidden motive, planned abduction, no evidence, and Nancy Guthrie. I don't think any of those are entirely true. The frustration comes in when this is day 45, I believe,
Yes.
of this investigation, and the public is frustrated. The number one frustrated people are the media, and they have no right to be frustrated. They gotta actually shut up every once in a while when they say stupid things like, "Is this a cold case?" You know, they were saying that after 2 weeks. They were saying that in, the Brian Koberger case, the Idaho 4. They were saying that after 2 weeks too. So don't listen to the media's bullshit about that. Investigation takes time, and good investigation, you have to be meticulous. You have to collect evidence. You have to be good at interview and interrogation. You have to be good at cataloging the case, at organizing the case. And that's where many things in this case are remiss, is that there wasn't good organization in this case. There wasn't good crime scene management. There wasn't good processing and collection of evidence. So we have to make up for all of that, all of those mistakes. And yes, the public, the press, and maybe even the police themselves are frustrated over the progress of this case. But no one's giving up. No one is giving up. And this is not a cold case right now. So the FBI, as we know, has recovered additional images from motion-activated cameras around Nancy Guthrie's home. What is the problem? None of these images show the actual abduction or clear suspicious activity. Even more concerning, no footage exists from the night she disappeared, which investigators find highly unusual. So now the investigators are focused upon pre-abduction surveillance. The FBI is zeroing in on two key dates, January 11th and January 24th, believed to be possible surveillance runs by the suspect. Detectives are pulling neighbor surveillance video from those days to track movements and vehicles. This strongly supports a targeted, pre-planned abduction, not a random act. And we've been saying that since minute one in this case. But interesting, Mike, that when we said very early on, this was a planned, targeted attack. And, in the beginning, of course, everyone was calling this a kidnapping. Now, not so much. Now, many of the talking heads, many of the alleged experts that speak on all the network news shows in this case, they're doing a bit of a tap dance. They're not sure what the hell we have here, right?
Right.
As it turned out, according to Matt Murphy, the great Orange County, California prosecutor, that he said all of the abduction letters or emails sent to TMZ were all fake. So can you imagine that? Everyone's hanging on Howard Levin's every word, it seemed, every few days. And Matt Murphy from the Orange County prosecutor's office, a very famous prosecutor from California, said every single one of those ransom notes were false, were fake. So what is that telling us, Mike?
Yeah, Bill, it tells us that the people who may have looked, that one person who may have looked a little bit clumsy, strange in the front of the house with the mask on, the gun in his crotch, and with the big gloves on, and trying to put a piece of foliage in front of the camera. He wasn't alone. There was other people. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about, okay, put myself in their shoes. If I'm going to go and target this house, I know who this lady is. She's a wealthy lady. She's the mother of a very famous person, Savannah Guthrie. She's got to have bucks. I'm going to go in there. Okay, let's scope this place out, do our research. We go there several days, see if there's any reaction from anybody in the home. Because if they could go and just walk around and be on camera one day, and then the actual day of going missing, the abduction, taking her, of the violence against her, doesn't seem right now to be any existing pictures, even little thumbnail pictures, let alone video. That shows that they knew pretty much exactly what they were doing on that particular day. That when they did this crime, they knew how to get in and how to get out and get her out without being seen. So that shows a high level of competence. And I think, unfortunately, this case was labeled kidnapping so early on that it made everybody into a media frenzy, because these kind of cases, you expect them to be solved really quickly. But it turned out to be that was what do you call it? A rabbit hole that was wrong. But it turned out very fast, and in our opinion, much quicker than some other people, that we realized those ransom demands were nonsense. That was not from the kidnappers whatsoever. And you, me, and Phil, we kind of pretty much early on thought there was some other nefarious violence going on, and this was not an intended kidnapping and holding for hostage for ransom whatsoever.
Absolutely. From the chat, at Daryl7777, Sergeant Bill, do you guys believe that the fact that the DNA found in her house was commingled is likely proof that there were more than one perpetrator? Daryl, I think there's several other indicators that show that there was not just one perpetrator. Yeah. But you're referring to the commingled DNA, yes. But there's several other factors. The fact that if the kidnapper or home invader, burglar, whatever you want to call this perpetrator, he had to snatch Nancy out of her bed. He would have needed someone driving the car to be ready for him when he showed up there. And I think he may have needed help getting her out of the house. And what we know is if we talk about the timeline even here, and doorbell camera disabled, 1:47 a.m. Suspect seen approaching, 2:12 a.m. Pacemaker signal loss, 2:28 a.m. That's a 40-minute operational window, tight, controlled, and organized. If that also isn't indicative of the fact that the perpetrators had planned this, reconned this, and timed it right down. And I'm not saying these guys are any, people always use the word, are they professionals? I've never met a professional criminal in my life. I've met people that try to be professional criminals, but they always wind up in prison. That breaks up their career a little bit, I've never seen anyone that people say, oh, this guy's a pro. Oh, really? He just did 5 years, just got out. He's so good at his job. He keeps winding up in prison, So when people say, oh, he's a pro, well, and that's usually the media comes up with that. Oh, is this guy a pro? Like, are you kidding me? Kiana Lang, I was looking for you. I saw you made Kiana, I wanted to give you a chance. At Kiana Lee Mag, where are all the documents that you're referring to that law enforcement didn't do? I'm not sure the question you're asking. What we were referring to is that right now, the FBI says that they have some new photos in regards to possible the perpetrators reconning the location, a dry run, if you will, a practice run, if you will. And those photographs that allegedly from the backyard of Nancy Guthrie, from the pool area, but could they be of workers, of people that had permission and authority to be on her property? But my big question is now, if these pictures are good and legible and they're clear, why isn't the FBI putting them out there in the media? Because millions of eyes are much better than hundreds of eyes. And if you're only allowing law enforcement to view these photos, how is law enforcement? Many of the law enforcement officers aren't even assigned to this area. So put it out on television, put it out in the media. And I know that, and look, I'm not going to criticize the FBI as to why. They may have a very good reason as to why they're not doing that. Maybe they have someone ID'd and they're focusing on that person. However, if they don't have someone ID'd and they're not focusing on someone, why not use the community to help identify these people so that you can move on to the next level of investigation? Mike.
Yeah, your suspicion and my suspicion is the same. There's a reason why they're not publishing these pictures. They have them, they've recovered them. They may not be much, but show it. My guess is that they're very grainy, or there's so much shadow. Maybe you see an arm, a torso, part of a torso. They may be good in trial after you identify this person, but as far as maybe a facial shot, I would hope that they would, at this point, with what has gone on and how long it's been going on now for like 44 days, that if they had anything even remotely clear, they would have had to release it. So they've got these images, yes, and it's probably took a lot of work to get these images, but they may be of little value at this point in the investigation. And it may be of greater value later on after you make an arrest or something like that. But at this point, they're probably just not really clear enough to even ask the public, hey, have you seen this person? Maybe the best we've got so far is that, unfortunately, is that guy with the branches in his hand, trying to stick it in front of the camera. Maybe that's the best we got.
Absolutely. From the chat at Byington 3798. I've known career criminals all my life. Not one would take the body. You know something, Byington, I hope you're not having a St. Patty's Day party at your house and inviting all these career criminals, because I'm not coming over if that's the case. Anyway, you're right, though.
Yeah.
I've never, ever heard of someone, well, you can't say they removed a body. They removed a live person, as far as we know. And if that's the case, then it was a kidnapping or revenge or something like that. But clearly, after 44 to 45 days, most people think, and it doesn't matter what our opinion or anyone else's opinion to the Guthrie family, they want to believe that their mother, Nancy, is still alive. And I would feel the same way, because until they find her alive or find her remains, they have to remain hopeful. This is from a local ABC News station.
New developments in the search for Nancy Guthrie. The FBI has recovered additional images from the cameras at her home. The images were recovered in recent weeks from motion-activated cameras trained on her swimming pool, backyard, and side yard. Now, those are different views than the cameras showing the man wearing a mask and carrying a gun on her doorstep the night that she was taken. Investigators were unable to recover video from the additional cameras, but still images captured when the cameras were triggered by motion. Sources tell ABC News the cameras caught several people in the yard during an unspecified period prior to the abduction, but nothing from the night Nancy Guthrie was taken.
Then you might be able to go back and fill in who potentially could have been around Nancy's house. It's pretty time-taking work, but again, it is leads or procedures, techniques like that sometimes can get you to the bad guy.
It is not clear if the recently recovered images will be helpful. In the meantime, a Florida lab is still trying to untangle a mixed DNA sample found inside Nancy Guthrie's.
So there we have it. There's pictures, but again, we don't know if they're usable. We don't know if anyone can be identified. The FBI, if they are usable, they may also apply facial recognition technology to the photographs before, or if they even put them out there to the public, to utilize the public to try to make an identification. So it's possible that the FBI has with all these pictures that reportedly now are reduced to like thumbnails.
Right.
If they're attempting, what I would do an investigation like this first, without putting them out there. I would probably want to put them out there in the media, but I would first use the family and ask them if they recognize anyone from these photos, because the family is all around their mother's house. The family may know work staff. The family may know people from the area. And potentially someone could say, oh, that's so-and-so. That looks like so-and-so. And that can cut to the chase, as we call it, and alleviate them from having to do a million other investigative checks. But then you have to go to the next level, in which we spoke about before, is to use the media, right? Use the press. As I said, my famous quote, the press can be your best friend or your worst enemy. So use them to be your friend at this time. Mike.
Yeah, you got to use the press. They're your gateway to the public, because that's where the public gets all their information from the media. And if you have anything of evidentiary value, not at a trial stage, but in a discovery stage, trying to get this perpetrator, if you've got anything, you've got to put it out there. Maybe there's a lot of blurriness in these pictures. Maybe there is a shot of somebody face on. That would be wonderful. And maybe it's poor quality, but they do have software that could actually sharpen the outline of the features and make it look more readable. That's possible. But I just want to make a quick comment about Byington's comment. I think it's fantastic. You, as a perpetrator, they took Nancy out of that house. She was, I believe, alive. I don't believe she's alive anymore, but you would never, ever, ever want to remove her body if she's already passed, because you do not want to have that sort of burden on you. So I believe she was alive when she went out of that house. I have my doubts about it right now. I'm a little skeptical, but it's been 44 days. But these people may have looked silly in the beginning and dumb and clumsy, but there's a couple of them involved. And at this point, they've done they did a good enough job, unfortunately, to thwart the FBI. And if you can do that, you got some game. And so these people are worthy criminal opponents, whether or not they're career criminals or not. Maybe they just got lucky. Maybe they just did some good planning, but they're smart and stupid at the same time. They're smart enough to do what they did right now, but hopefully they're dumb enough to have left some sort of trail, some sort of clues that the FBI is working on right now.
Absolutely. Shania 134. Why in house 41 minutes? Well, I gave you the timeline, right? Doorbell camera disabled 1:47 a.m. All right. Suspect seen approaching 2:12 a.m. Pacemaker signal lost 2:28 a.m. The pacemaker signal loss is indicative of the fact that she was taken away from the home, which had the Wi-Fi. The pacemaker would hit the Wi-Fi signal and it disconnected from that. That is how law enforcement put together this timeline. Is it disturbing to anyone in the chat, anyone listening, that these bad guys were in her house for 41 minutes? It is to me. And as Mike was talking about before, in a homicide investigation, we have never, ever heard in our police careers the perpetrators taking the person from the scene unless they were alive. Like, would they kill someone and then take them with them? That's, the only reason you could see something like that is because the body itself is a crime scene. The body tells a story. The body tells a story because of how the manner and the cause of death, right? If there was an exchange of evidence, evidence from the perpetrator getting on the victim's body and vice versa. So all of those things are potentially a reason why, but I have never in my police career ever seen a murder where the perpetrators took the victim from the scene and then thereafter the victim's body was never to be recovered. So that is a bizarre situation. One of the things also that we heard, and so I got to address this also. Dread Lover, Sergeant Bill, how big of a mistake was it for them not to take the doormat for evidence? If they didn't, in fact, take the doormat, it was a huge mistake. But I got to think that they did take it. And look, don't forget, the sheriff here, Sheriff Nanos, They froze the crime scene for like a day, and then they opened it after that. So he let the family back in. Could the family have put another doormat there and they had taken the doormat that had the evidence on it? I think that's probably the case. And I know so many people are upset that it appears like they never took the doormat for the evidence. And I don't know if, in fact, that was true. KMTX from the chat, 78, I was hoping they would have audio and released it by now, but I guess not. At KMTX 78, I guess not. I guess they do not have any audio at this point. Daryl at Daryl7777, Banks, I should have wrote further proof of more than one perpetrator. Well, it was clear enough. Ginny from Ginny N9660 from the chat. There's a well-known podcaster for crimes who keeps saying kidnapping, but have always thought kidnapping means the perp will demand money or something from the family. You know, Ginny, right now, there's not a person out there that can 100% say, oh, this was a kidnapping, right? There's not a person out there that can say, this was a home invasion. There's not a person out there that can 100% say, this was a burglary gone bad. Or, even worse, this was a revenge killing. So none of those things can be reported or said by anyone because no one has the evidence right now to prove it, right? At Rachel Tabran 2086, this case is so frustrating. And the sheriff speaking recently that it was planned, targeted abduction. That doesn't seem like any new news. Wasn't that already obvious? You know something, Rachel Tabran, I just think that the sheriff here should not make comments, period, because he's not one of the investigators. And he's saying things out of order that are not helping the case. So I wish that he would stop making comments. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up. Hit the like button. Ring the bell. Share us with your friends and your family. And if you want to contribute financially, we have a Patreon with 4 different levels. And we also have a YouTube channel membership with 5 different levels. And you can become a member. Become an off the cuffer, a police off the cuffer through joining our YouTube channel. So this case, there's nothing. Every day, many people out there are doing summations on where we're at right now. But realize this, and I know it's frustrating for everyone, that investigators are busy every single day working on leads, right? So Sheriff Nano said, we know the motive, but then he wouldn't say what it was. Investigators believe they understand why she was targeted, but they're withholding it from the public. Why would you mention it then? That's a huge indicator. This is likely very specific, personal, financial, or known offender, not a random home invasion. And the sheriff further public safety warning, the suspect could strike again. That suggests offender profile equals organized, plus confident, and not contained. And we also want to hear about all the time the forensics in this case. Why hasn't the forensics come through and identified a perpetrator? DNA, blood, saliva evidence. Why fingerprint evidence? Why hasn't that identified a perpetrator? DNA testing has not identified a suspect yet. Evidence, video, digital, lab work is still being processed. Case is now entering week 7 with no arrest. I lost Mike a little bit into cyberspace, but he's back. Mike, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. I was lost in space.
So, Mike, all of these things, the evidence that we were all hoping for, the DNA, right? The digital evidence. And we had thought that the like geofencing, that technology that can pull up digital things like cell phones, laptops, computers, car computers, can pull up those things and at a specific time in a specific area and identify a perpetrator. But so far, no such luck, Mike.
Yeah, I think we're a little bit spoiled. The public is, and I think you and I also, because we've seen the development of this technology in the 90s, into the early 2000s, and then now it's even better. We get spoiled because you see a case like Rex Sherman. They got him going every which way but loose because of all the technology that they used in terms of phone geofencing. With the phone, they could figure out where his phone was in Midtown Manhattan, distinguish it amongst thousands upon thousands of other cell phones traveling to Long Island with one of the victims' own phones also at the same time. It's just we're spoiled because it seems like we always catch the guy or the perpetrator in each and every case with this fantastic, unbeatable information and technology. But there's cases like this where, for some reason, perhaps they've already identified a cell phone. Maybe they just haven't told anybody. But it seems frustrating to the public because why this case? This case seems like a simple case. It's one lady who's been taken out of her home in a neighborhood. It's not a crowded city where there's all kinds of maybe bad guys. It's one place. Why can't we get this person? And in this case, maybe, the technology may help us. Maybe it's farther along the investigation than we know, but it's frustrating because law enforcement is so good at this. Why this case? Why is this case not working out the way we'd like it to? And even though 44 days isn't a lot, and you've done cases probably that have lasted several years, the public is just questioning. This should be solved with all the technology. We know about it. We're familiar about it. We hear about it. What's going on? What is missing? And that's the frustration.
Absolutely. From the chat, Nancy Morris 4406. What exactly are thumbnail photos? Basically, I'm going to put up a thumbnail up right now. There's a thumbnail. That's an extreme. Right here's a thumbnail. All of these are thumbnails. Or even here's a picture of a car. That's a thumbnail. It's just a small picture that's reproduced. Even it could be like this sketch here is made from a thumbnail. So what the FBI would be doing, would they be producing smaller pictures from a video and making what's known as a thumbnail? I hope I answered your question. Let's see. I'm Mountain Cat 5248. I'm still stuck on why Nancy had to take an Uber to a planned dinner at her daughter's. They only live 10 minutes from her house. I don't know if that's really, I'm sure they interviewed the Uber driver, but I don't think that's a huge part of this investigation anymore. People take Ubers all the time, and maybe if she went over someone's house for dinner and people were drinking, they didn't want to drive her home because they've been drinking. There's a good reason why people take Ubers all the time, but I'm sure they've identified the Uber driver and have interviewed the Uber driver at this point. Mike.
Yeah, it's so common, and as you say, with alcohol involved, it's a dark area. There's not a lot of lighting because people don't want to spoil their view of the stars. I understand that, and so therefore, they would just prefer take the Uber. It might take a few minutes to get to your house, but just do it, and this way you don't have to worry about taking that last drink or enjoying yourself. Yeah, it's not uncommon. Maybe in some other places it may be uncommon, but in this case, I could see it. I could see it. And if like you said, she took an Uber, they knew who the driver was. They probably interviewed that person within the first 12 hours of the investigation and cleared that person. I would hope by now they'd clear that person, but that's not uncommon. It's just not uncommon.
Yeah, absolutely. This is from the Today Show. It's actually a day or two old.
Nancy Guthrie's disappearance continues. Over the last week, so many people still showing up and showing their support for Savannah.
I've watched the Today Show for many years, and you become family.
We're not going to stop praying until we get an answer, and some closure.
Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos telling us they're still working to identify that masked man at Nancy's home.
Do you think that this suspect could strike again, whoever did this?
Well, absolutely. Absolutely.
That question, any first of all, he shouldn't have answered it, but any perpetrator out there that gets away, yeah, he could strike again. But is that really a necessary question to ask, to throw that into the mix of this investigation? I think he should have sidestepped it and not answered that question, because then he just makes himself part of this case when he does answer it. And I wish he hadn't answered it.
Minds are criminal minds.
While he didn't disclose it, the sheriff says investigators do have a theory for a motive.
We believe we know why he did this, and we believe that it was targeted, but we're not 100% sure of that. And so it'd be silly to tell people, yeah, don't worry about it. You're not his target. No, you could be.
He says investigators are still actively working their leads, including that unknown DNA.
Is there still hope that this mixed DNA will be able to be identified?
Absolutely. That's going to get us to somebody, we hope.
Nanos also confirmed investigators have been looking into a potential internet issue or other electrical disruption the night of the abduction.
There was a timeline when things went offline. So we're looking into that. Why did that occur? We check with our power companies. We check with others in the neighborhood.
And that's beyond just the fact that the suspect took the camera off.
Correct.
As the investigation goes on, an incredible outpouring of love for the Guthrie family.
It says, Nancy, all of us are praying for you to come home now.
Tucson artist Donna Prius, who goes by the name Pinky, has been leaving these canvas paintings outside Nancy's home.
Something they can save, something that they read, and I think they'll feel it in their heart. I know Savannah will.
Now, in addition to the sheriff confirming authorities are looking into whether there was that internet or potential electrical issue the night of Nancy's abduction, he said they don't believe that the damaged utility box near Nancy's home is connected. As for what he told us about knowing why the suspect did this, he says they've had a theory from day one. We did press him, but he just would not say what that is. The FBI, for their part, has not commented on any motive.
So he threw that all into the mix and then sidestepped it. I was just like, why do you want to say that? We know the motive, but we're not telling you. Why would you do that, Mike?
It's kind of strange, because if the police had an idea from the very first day what it was, and people were running around believing it was a kidnapping, they should have corrected that and said, look, we don't believe this is a kidnapping, but we have, an idea of the direction we're going in. Leave it at that. But if they knew what it was and allowed the frustration with the public and the media to go crazy and thinking this was a kidnapping, and that would be over within, several days, to get this poor 84-year-old lady with poor health back to her friends, hospital, and to her family, would you not, let the public know that, we don't believe this is a kidnapping. We have our ideas and we're going in a particular direction. We cannot alert anybody as to who we believe. We want to be really careful. A few controlled, reassuring words at that time would have been better. I think Sheriff Nanos does a disservice at this point with the press and the public, because I think he really kind of confuses the matter. And don't broach that subject about motive now and then not give any information. Just say, don't even go there. Don't even bother going to there. I don't know why he did it.
Absolutely. From the chat, Schmitty, Witty Schmitty 9135. Sergeant Bill, provided the perps are not dead, if they apprehend them, would they need a body of the victim? You mean, would they have to recover a body of the victim to charge the perpetrators? The answer is no. There have been numerous cases across this country where prosecutors have gotten conviction on murders where the body was never recovered, but they have to have evidence strong enough to connect the perpetrators to the crime and to the body. If they don't, then it would be very difficult to get a conviction minus a body and minus a lot of evidence. So therefore, they would need a lot of evidence to connect Nancy Guthrie to the perpetrators who did this. And that's, conjecture if they don't recover. And at this point, we're still hoping, of course, that she's alive. But to answer your question, it is possible for a prosecutor to get a conviction, which is done numerous times in this country, without a body being recovered. Mike.
Yeah, it makes the job a whole lot more difficult. But with circumstantial evidence, a prosecutor has to prove to the jury that Nancy perished. How? She would never used her cell phone after a particular date. She never text messaged anybody after a particular date. She never called any after a particular date. She never used her credit card after a particular date. She was never seen driving around after a particular date. She never used a debit card after a particular date. There's been absolutely no information from her, no sighting of her after a particular date. And we see blood evidence that she was wounded on a particular date. To me, that would be circumstantial evidence enough for a jury to conclude that, yes, she was killed. Yes, she was a murder victim. And so that's how you do it. It's a pain in the neck, but it's done. It's rare, but it is done. Yes.
Mike, everyone not everyone, but many people in the chat are conjecturing as to what this was and who did it. And we don't have, or law enforcement doesn't have, tremendous evidence pointing at a specific person or persons, nor is law enforcement coming out with the motive, other than Sheriff Nano saying he knows the motive, but I'm not going to tell you, So I don't know, but everyone wants to know that, and everyone has their opinion. And as I said, talking heads, experts from across the globe have weighed in on this case, but not a single one of them would bet a year's salary saying, I know it's this, because they don't feel that strongly about it. But it's easy to give an opinion, but they don't know exactly. Schmitty from the chat, thank you for the $5 super sticker. Sergeant Bill provided the purpose. Oh, we already read your question, but now it came with a $5 super sticker.
Thank you.
So yeah, so many people have their opinions in this case, but what's going to solve this case is something called evidence. And unless they have evidence, and evidence is something that makes something else apparent, right? Through proving it through some way. Mike, your thoughts? You're the criminal justice professor.
Well, on this case, it might be a combination of digital evidence. It's going to be a combination of blood evidence. It's going to be a combination of maybe with DNA evidence. There may be some testimonial evidence, some video, some pictures here, pictures there. It's going to be a circumstantial case unless somebody actually is a witness to this crime and decides to rat out their co-conspirator and claim $1 million. This is going to be a completely circumstantial evidence. It will be very strong, but it's going to be a lot of little. There's not, as you would say, the smoking gun video or something like that. No, it's going to go out. It's going to be a lot of little case.
Mike, your signal's going out. I don't know. Maybe you got to sign out and come back in. So yeah, so far in this case, there's not that smoking gun evidence. See, everyone wanted to hear, we thought when we heard about that they identified a car or cars from a Ring camera. Everyone thought that was going to be outstanding evidence that they were going to believe. And maybe it is, and they're still working on it. But so far, that evidence has not come forward with a vehicle that they can connect. They can get a nexus between the vehicle seen on that night and this crime. So far, there is no proof of that. Does that mean that they're not still working on this, or there's not a viable lead to that? No, there is, but again, investigation takes time, right? Again, I'm seeing a lot of people with theories theories in the chat, and Nancy at Nancy Simmons 2225. My question is, how did they know she had cameras in the house? She had two. How did they know that? How did they know where the hell they were? It doesn't make sense. Well, if you're referring to the bad guys, to the perpetrators, it's potentially an inside job. It potentially was someone that did work for her. It was someone that knew someone that did work for her. It was somehow they were able to recon the location and find out some of these things. I'm going to bring Mike back onto the screen. Mike, you were cutting out a little bit, so I had to take you off.
Sorry. Very sorry.
So, Mike, if we're talking about, the evidence and the fact that the perpetrators seem to know the house, they seem to know the location, they seem to know the area, and some of the people in the chat were questioning as to how did they know it. And my answer to that was, well, potentially the perpetrators may have worked for Nancy Guthrie or had friends or family members who worked for her, could have had pictures or stills or video of what the house looked like, the location. And again, the FBI is looking for two different dates to get video from. Perhaps they reconned the location. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think these people are out of state. I don't think they're from a Mexican drug cartel. People opined all kinds of relationships. I think this is somebody who's a local in the area. The farthest away may be Phoenix, but this is somebody who knows the lay of the land. They've done their reconnaissance. Maybe they've been there several times before. Once they get into that house, it's a large house, but it's one floor. Maybe they did got something from one of the real estate websites, because occasionally you'll see plans for a home on a the house outline, the house shape and the rooms identified. They did enough work to get to successfully get her out of there. I think no matter what you think the motive was, kidnapping, ransom, SA, just to kill her, hurt her, abuse her, no matter what it is, this was a crime of violence against her. And they were good enough, and in their reconnaissance and all the footwork that they did ahead of time to accomplish what they did. But this was something well planned, well thought out. It looked bungling in the beginning, and that gave everybody hope that this would be solved, because after all, who would walk around with a piece of vine and stick it on top of a camera? That sounds ridiculous, but they did enough, and they did enough to make it a thorough job of it and accomplish what they did. If you can frustrate the FBI, then you've done quite a good amount of work ahead of time.
Absolutely. From the chat at Card Shop MD, at Police Off the Cuff, he has a motive. Her husband was an expert mining engineer. He had the maps for the gold deposits in Mexico. Gold is $50 to $200 an ounce. If I believe this, and if I threw this out there in the mix, this is bigger than the Lindbergh kidnapping. That really changes things. And if there's any truth to that, I'll eat a pound of corned beef and cabbage today. But I don't know if there's any truth to that. Simi Sharp. Tips 1-800-CALL-FBI or FBI.gov/tips. Thank you, Simi. And Simi's a moderator. She does a fantastic job. And I hear she's a mean bass player. Bass as a boom, 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 boom.
Good.
So she's a great bass player. Lisa Renfro, 6330. Then something very strange is going on, because it's all so obvious. And whatever happened to interrogations? Well, to interrogate someone, they have to be a suspect, right? You can't really interrogate a witness. You can interview a witness. You can't interrogate them. So I'm not sure what you're referring to with that. Someone else agrees with the Card Shop MD. Spot on. Copper too. You guys are throwing this into the mix that it's all about gold. That's the first time I have ever heard that. So again, Sunshine Lady -D4R from the chat. Happy St. Paddy's Day. And that goes happy St. Paddy's Day to all our friends from Ireland, and probably is a bigger celebration of St. Paddy's Day in the US than there is in Ireland, right? They're all, the St. Patty's Day parade in New York City, and all of the suburb communities all have little St. Patrick's Day parades. So thank you for that, and all the folks in the chat. Beverly Lawyer, at Beverly Lawyer 9692. Big house, one old lady, no dog. Why ain't very secure doors and windows in place like normal people in Detroit? Well, Beverly Lawyer 9692, many people across this country feel so safe in their homes. Some people don't even lock their doors. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
Depending on where you live, you can't imagine that. But there is definitely people that do not lock their doors. I want to play this from Fox. Get this up on the screen, folks. Here we go.
The FBI has recovered new images from Nancy Guthrie's home cameras. Pictures from her front door, driveway, and backyard show people and cars in the days leading up to her disappearance. But they're still missing critical footage of the night she went missing. And sources say that's odd. And the FBI says they don't have any plans to release the new images. And they're still hunting for new leads. They've even reportedly questioned employees at a Mexican restaurant where Nancy taped a segment with Savannah for the Today Show months before she vanished.
What made you want to stay in Tucson and plant roots?
It's so wonderful. Just the air, the quality of life is laid back and gentle. Yeah, I like to watch the javelina eat my plants.
But the best thing about Tucson is coming home and
Yes.
seeing you guys. Should we raise a glass? Prickly Pear Margarita? Cheers. Cheers.
Cheers.
Love you.
Love you.
Nancy's been missing for 6 weeks now. Police still don't have any updates. The sheriff, he's still talking, telling Tucson, lock your door.
We believe we know why he did this, and we believe that it was targeted, but we're not 100% sure of that. And so it'd be silly to tell people, yeah, don't worry about it. You're not his target. Don't think for a minute that because it happened to the Guthrie family, you're safe. No, keep your wits about you.
So this was a targeted hit, but neighbors should be worried? It's been almost 2 months. We need more answers. The sheriff only has theories.
I think from day one, we had some strong beliefs about what happened, and those beliefs haven't diminished.
Do you believe it was a burglary gone wrong?
I'm not going to get into those theories. We have our beliefs. Everybody else has theirs.
So no updates, no suspects, no clue where Nancy is. Is the case cold? We hope not. We're still praying for Nancy and her safe return. Chris Swecker is a former FBI assistant director. So Chris, there've been showing, I guess, an ability to extract more images from the home cameras from all over the place, but nothing new from that night. Is that weird?
Well, I think it depends on whether those are motion activated cameras, which I think they are. And if the FBI, and I think the FBI is in the lead here behind the scenes, if the FBI thought those videos could help solve this, help the public, help us solve the investigation, they would do that. But they're not releasing it. That tells me that they don't think it's all that relevant, or they're running it out themselves first. But every time the sheriff talks, I get less and less confidence about the investigation in this case.
What do you make about looking more closely at this Mexican restaurant?
I think it's a logical lead. We've been sort of play-by-playing this investigation since day one, and all these little things come out in dribs and drabs. It's hard to get excited about any one particular lead at this point, or any one particular overt investigative act. And that's what we're seeing now is, sparsely spaced out now, but overt investigative acts get noticed, and we make a lot out of it. But I just don't see that as being a breakthrough or representing a breakthrough in the case.
Is this case cold?
I don't know if we can call it cold, but I would call it lukewarm and cooling off pretty quickly. I think they're still going through a lot of data. The FBI analysts in the background are crunching through a lot of the data. I think the video is painstaking because it has to be real time, frame by frame review. And I think there's a lot of it to review. And I think there's a lot of stores in the area and outside the area looking for that merchandise that was purchased. and that has to be reviewed by analysts as well. 40,000 tips and leads. They're still chewing through all of that.
So many different things, so many different pieces of evidence, so many different directions. And that's the thing that many people don't understand, is that in an investigation as large as this, there's always a investigative direction. And in this case, obviously, because of the kidnapping angle, that was the direction they initially went with the kidnapping. And then to exacerbate that were the ransom notes to TMZ, which sort of threw the case off course a little bit. Although I think very early on, the FBI was very, very skeptical of those ransom notes. Remember, the one ransom note wanted 1 Bitcoin, and he was not the kidnapper, but he knew who they were. I mean, so come on. And I have a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you, So many different directions. So then which way, what direction does law enforcement take? That is the decision that has to be made by a boss, by a big boss that's good at running major investigations. And I would think that at this point, hopefully the FBI is running this now, because Sheriff Nanos has shown an inability to do so. And not that I don't mean to beat him down, but I've witnessed a lot of the things he's done, and I don't have a lot of confidence in him, nor does Chris Swicker, the former big-time FBI boss. Mike.
Yeah, the FBI should have been the lead in this, in terms of they got the manpower, they got the resources, they got the know-how. The Pima County Sheriff is going to be officially in charge of the case, but early on, before they released that crime scene back to the family after like only 24 hours, the FBI should have been called, gotten men down on that area, seen that area, and made a decision whether or not they should release it or keep it closed. And even with the family wanting that house open back to them, they should have kept it closed. The fact that the FBI came in after some damage had been done by the Pima County with their releasing the crime scene and allowing all the people to go in on the trounce all over, including a lot of YouTubers. These are mistakes that you may not recover from. If it was up to me, I would want to see that, perimeter still maintained. I wouldn't release that back to the family. Until you get her, until you declare that this case is a closed case, however you want to end it, but you got to keep that pristine, because you may need to go back one more time. So a lot of things are done by Pima County that may have been done wrong in the beginning. And once you go off on the wrong track, you may not be able to get back, to doing it right and recovering from the damage that they may have done. I wish it had started out differently, because you see where we're ending up at this point. And that is frustrating to the FBI, because they can't undo what was done, and it's frustrating to the public. But the public always has to remember, if this is a homicide, 44 days into a homicide investigation is not long. 44 days into what was only supposed to be a kidnapping, yes, agree 100%. But whatever this started out to be, it turned into a cluster freak really fast. And here we are, 44 days out.
At Kimberly 800, at police off the cuff, if the front outside door needed a key to lock or unlock, could that be better evidence of at least a second perp? Yeah, I mean, that's evidence of, yeah, but I think there's lots of evidence of, and that's one. You just added it on the pile of evidence of there being more than one perpetrator. Someone from the chat at LKB728, did they choose Nancy because of her political past? At LKB728, unknown at this point. We don't know the motive right now. So I'm reading some of the chat. I don't like him as well. He's botched this case since day one. I think you may be referring to Sheriff Nanos. J Gammas 5023. Sarge, Professor, because of the Tepes case, do you think law enforcement's investigation into this case would include interviewing exes like Savannah's first husband? Yeah, I mean, it could include all of that. Absolutely. It depends how far law enforcement is going to dig. And some of the things that are not sexy to the real crime people is there's a lot of administrative things like back financial checks, on Nancy Guthrie, financial checks on some of the people in the family. Was someone in the family having big financial problems? Did they have motive, perhaps, to have Nancy kidnapped? So yeah, all of those things are investigative. When the investigation when they say it casts a huge wide net, that's part of the wide net, is doing all those investigative checklist things that may give you some answers. And what everyone, of course, is always counting on in these cases is the science, right? The commingled DNA. How long will it take to come back? We had the other night, CeCe Moore was on News Nation, and we pulled up some of the things she was saying. She's a brilliant lady, and she's probably the go-to person nationally on investigative genetic genealogy. And everyone, of course, is hoping and praying that the answer to this case is going to come from science, right? Investigative genetic genealogical hit will identify someone that may have done this. Again, from the chat at Daryl7777, Sergeant Bill, you guys even confident that they know that she was targeted, given the fact that Chief Fry said the same thing about the Idaho 4 case, and that turned out to be BS and no motive was known. I don't believe that in the Idaho 4 case that they were not targeted. I believe they were. And I believe
they were.
I believe that the Moscow police were told not to say that. I totally believe that. And evidence of that is that the university couldn't have that house knocked down fast enough because it was killing their enrollment. So there were politics behind the scene. I believe those Idaho 4 kids were targeted. And no one also, except us, we were one of the only podcasts to say that the motive in the Idaho 4 case was a psychosexual motive by Brian Koberger. And we had Jim Clemente, retired FBI agent, head writer for Criminal Minds, one of the best profilers in the world. He agreed with us. 100% agreed with us, and so did Dr. Joni Johnston. So here we are, whittle cops from the NYPD that predicted what the motive was. And I believe we were 100% right. And for many reasons, there is politics of these cases. Many reasons these jurisdictions don't want to tell you the truth. And you know why? Follow the money. And in Idaho, Moscow, Idaho, the university was losing, they were hemorrhaging money because 4 innocent students that went to University of Idaho were slaughtered in an off-campus house. So think of that, think of that. There's a lot of politics to this too. Mike and I, retired NYPD Detective Phil Grimaldi, were not privy to the case folder. We're not privy to the meetings that all the investigators go to every day to discuss this case, to discuss where they're at and where they're going with this case. We don't know. Folks, just like you to know that Police Off the Cuff is sponsored by FanDuel on the Believe Network. Mike, your final thoughts.
I believe that this case will be solved. I think it's going to take a while longer because of the DNA. If the perpetrator's DNA isn't in CODIS, or a member of their family hasn't uploaded DNA to a genealogical website, then you're in a difficult position as law enforcement. I would like to think that the cell phone technology and the geofencing would provide us some answers. We've seen how good it is in other cases. Right now, everybody's frustrated, but I don't want people to think that the FBI is a cold case. No. This is not a cold case. The FBI is working this case actively. I'm sure Pima County is still doing interviews with people as more and more information comes up about who was at her house, who did she know, relatives, friends, acquaintances, neighbors. all kinds of things like that. So I just hope the public doesn't think that this is a cold case.
Yeah, no, I think we have sort of emphasized that we do not believe this is a cold case. I mean, you can believe News Nation, you can believe NBC, ABC, CBS, CNN. If they say it, if you want to believe them, believe them. But so the truth is, they don't know what they're talking about. So you can go and believe them. But anyway, if you want real crime, true crime from a police perspective, you're in the right place. Police off the cuff, right? Folks, thank you so much for tuning in today on behalf of myself, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, and retired also Sergeant, but professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, and attorney at law, Michael Geary. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great day, everyone. God bless.
One episode just ain't enough.